I just really wanted a cute Christmas story, and instead I got this racist, sexist book that I did not expect. Hola, hola mi gente, welcome back to my channel. I am XO Joe. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. Since I recently posted my best reads of 2022, I figured we would go into my worst reads of 2022. I normally don't talk about my worst reads. I did put out a little poll on Booksta and on YouTube, and some of you said you actually enjoy watching worst reads as well, so let's give it a shot. Here are my top 5 worst reads of 2022. This isn't ranked in any particular order, but there is one that I dislike the most, and I'll let you know which one that is when I get to it. Starting at 5, The Curse of the Blessed. I had really high expectations for this one. It had secret life at court, it had a magic system, it had forbidden love. It was just so disappointing. It focuses on a girl who was taught to always hide her magic. Her father and her mother taught her that if she were to reveal she had magic, people would come after her. The court of this kingdom would be very upset and just use her or test on her, and it was just strictly forbidden. So she suppressed her magic for years, and when she's 16 she accidentally exposes her magic, saving a kid from a falling tree, and she does this in front of the council, which her uncle belongs to as well. She believes her uncle has to bribe some of the counselors to make sure they don't expose her or turn her into the court. It turns out this whole time they were actually looking for people with magic, and they want to marry the prince off to someone with really powerful magic so that they could have more mages. So this whole time she thought she was cursed when in fact she was blessed, therefore the name The Curse of the Blessed. Her uncle confesses that her dad made him promise to not take her away or tell her about her magic and how the court wants to use her or values her for her magic. This is where I started to see issues. For one, at the beginning of the book, May, our MC, is constantly talking about how she has to suppress her magic, how it hurts, how she wishes she could just be free, how she's doing her best to not disappoint her family and protect herself so that they don't have to see her off. And she finally finds out that after 16 years, this was all a lie. And instead of really hashing it out with her uncle and asking questions, she just shrugs it off, and then they start talking about her going to the court so that she could potentially become the bride of the crowned prince. The dialogue was just super weird. It was very spelled out throughout the entire book. I understand I am valued at the court, uncle. I will do my best to go, uncle. It was just so long, the entire dialogue, and it didn't feel authentic. They felt very robotic. Also, her best friends start getting upset with her for wanting to go off to court, and she suddenly has this newfound profound mission to do what's best for her nation and for her town, and she really wants to go off and do this, but it just felt so out of touch. It really didn't seem like there was any thought process that made sense for her to come to this conclusion. And I also didn't understand why her friends were so pissed off, and again the dialogue was so robotic. I am mad at you, Maeve. I am sorry, you are mad at me. I am very mad at you. I noticed a lot of other reviewers also complained about the dialogue, how it just didn't flow right, and it was just very, very long. There were these paragraphs of just one person talking, but it doesn't really captivate you. And I think it's a really good example of this other author that said, you can't write dialogue like in real life. You have to make it feel like it's real dialogue. It really sounded like someone just transcribed really awkward interactions and just put this all in a book. When she finally made it to court, I was hoping things would become more interesting, and it just got worse. It gave me some whiplash of like, she wants to be queen, she doesn't want to be queen, but not in this inner turmoil type of way, just in a way that didn't really give the character some consistency or some depth. Again, the dialogue continued and got worse. May couldn't really be alone. It was like every other sentence she kept running into 5 people plus, and they would go into these really long dialogues. So it really wasn't a favorite. I was really disappointed by it. That's, yeah, one of my worst reads of the year. The next one is actually a series. At number 4 we have the CurseBreaker series. There's a dog barking outside. The CurseBreaker series is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. It mixes urban fantasy and high fantasy because the main character comes from Washington, DC, and the Beast, the other MC in this book, is in the realm of Emberfall, which is all high fantasy in a completely different world with a magic system and no technology or deodorant. I do recommend the first book, and it actually shows up in my Unexpected Reads series. I really love the first book. It just got worse. The story focuses on Ren, who is cursed every single season. By the end of the season, if he doesn't find a woman to fall in love with him, he becomes a monster. He was cursed by an enchantress who really wanted to rule with him, but because he denied her, she decided to curse him and the entire kingdom. By the time Harper, our MC from DC, ends up in his realm, his own family is dead, the king is gone. No one knows about this. He's the one who killed them when he was in his monster state because he's not conscious when he is a monster. It's really tragic that he murdered his entire family. His kingdom is going to ruin because he closed off all the borders once this happened. There's been no trade, a ton of poverty, and an actual rival kingdom trying to take them over without his knowledge. So there's a lot laid out in the first book. I binged it. It was so good, but like I said, it got worse and worse. Ended up giving the third book 1 star. I was just so disappointed. In the second book, I was still pretty open-minded to the way the story wanted to unfold. There's a very loyal guardsman that protects Ren at all costs. They really look like brothers in the way that they interact with each other, even though Ren is the crown prince, and Gray is a really loyal guardsman who takes his oath very seriously. By the end of book 1, there's just a lot of twists and turns, and the book continues on this other story where Ren and Gray are pitted against each other. It was just really disappointing because in the first book, Ren has a lot of growth that he needs in order to win over Harper and also become a better king. And you see this growth, and it's really great. The development was amazing. I think the author did a really good job at writing all the characters' development. So I was really disappointed that in book 2, that all goes away. I mean, Ren is whipping little kids' backs. He's keeping secrets. He is so cold. He's unreasonable. He's murdering his own citizens. It's just such a hot mess. I had no idea how the author expected readers to turn around and love Ren again after ruining his entire arc. By the third book, it just ends up being a total disappointment. The loyalty that we see with Gray goes out the window. The decisions made at the end and how the characters all end up in their titles and their roles also made absolutely no sense when each character was very sure of who they wanted to be and who they were raised to be in the future. It just all goes out the window. I really did have an open mind because I don't think you should rate a book low just because maybe your favorite ship doesn't end up together or your favorite character dies or something like that. But when the story doesn't seem to flow in a way that makes sense to the character, I hate it. Like, I don't like being forced as a reader to accept something that just doesn't make sense or flow. A TV example, if you've ever watched Gilmore Girls, I compare this to Rory a lot. She absolutely loves school, and then suddenly she quits Yale. She's okay later on in the reboot, cheating with a partner who's engaged while she's also in a relationship. It's just so weird. Her development made no sense when for 4 seasons they really drilled it into our heads that Rory loves school, she's passionate, she's ambitious, and then suddenly she just decides to quit. And so the same happened here. Ren's choices, Harper's choices made more sense than the other characters. Gray's absolutely did not. I didn't like the ending. I wish I didn't pick up this series at all because the first book was incredible and I just honestly disliked everything at the end. I wanted to throw it into the fire. At number 3, don't come at me, but it's actually Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. I really like The Nightmare Before Christmas. More importantly, I was so curious about the rest of the holidays that we see Jack look at, but he doesn't enter those tree stumps. He enters Christmas only. And in this book, we are promised that Sally would explore all these other places. So I was really curious. Not only that, but she is now married to Jack and she becomes the first ever pumpkin queen. And so this story story is about her struggle with becoming so in the spotlight and leading, and people trying to turn her into something she doesn't want to be. But it was so disappointing. The whole book, Sally's just completely obsessed with Jack, and we know that she liked Jack from back in the day, but like literally her whole life is Jack and how amazing he is and how good he is, and she's just obsessed, kind of like puts him on this pedestal. And that's just not the Sally that I met in The Nightmare Before Christmas. She also doesn't speak up for herself. She's always talking down on herself, like just a rag doll. I'm only a rag doll. I'm just a rag doll. And actually that's the only way she's described throughout the entire book. She's always described as pulling my threads, my seams, my threads, my seams. At one point I just started laughing every time I saw threads and seams, because that's literally the only way she would describe herself, this lowly rag doll, only a rag doll, only a seam. It was just ridiculous. Later on, we see a villain, which is the Sandman, that comes through and basically puts everyone to sleep in a really, really deep slumber that doesn't affect her, but there's no way to wake anyone up. And again, she's just obsessed with Jack. And instead of being the Sally that tried to save Christmas and like spoke up, we get the Sally who lays down next to Jack and just wants to die. Her development wasn't spectacular either. You spend 90% of the book or 95% of the book with her talking down to herself, thinking she's not fit to be queen because she's not pretty and she's a seam and a thread and a rag doll for the 1000th time. The final 5%, she decides all of a sudden that she's set, except again, she goes back to just wanting to die with Jack. It wasn't a good read, okay? It just wasn't a good read. I thought maybe it was just me who didn't like the way the author wrote this book. Upon further reflection and talking with someone else who absolutely loves Sally, we both realized that yeah, it's not so much the writing as much as the content and the way the author created Sally, and moved away from this woman who fought for her freedom and also spoke up and wanted to save Christmas, to this rag doll with seams and threads, and that's it. But I tried it. At number 2, this is a novella called The Boy Who Didn't Come Home. This is supposed to be read after The Hazelwood and before Tales of the Hinterland. And it focuses on our main guy MC in the first book, Ellery Finch. Now, I actually really like The Hazelwood, and I always wondered why Finch did what he did and why he didn't decide to go back with Hazel later on in the book. I always love prequels or short stories or in-between stories that give us more insight into a very intricate world, especially when that world has really deep secrets and we want to know why a character did something or what they were doing while the other MC was doing their thing. So I was really excited for this one. I just love any expansion of the world. This story, again, promised that we would see what Finch was up to between these two books and why he did what he did in the first book. It did answer a little bit of why he did what he did in the first book, but not really in depth. And what's worse is that we actually don't get to know what he was up to between these two stories. So I saw a lot of reviewers say, what the heck? I was promised that I would find out what Finch was up to while Hazel was doing her thing right before starting the second book, and that just didn't happen. So a real big disappointment. I even went back toward the final few chapters like, did I maybe zone out and not read this properly? Because I don't feel like I actually got any of Finch's story between these two books. I still don't know what he was up to, and it's no different than what I learned about in the second book. Really disappointed, gave it 2 stars. I still really like Melissa Albert, and I also still like the author that wrote the CurseBreaker series. I like their writing, I just didn't appreciate their choices. Now, the worst book of the year. I just really wanted a cute Christmas story, and instead I got this racist, sexist book that I did not expect. My worst read of the year was Let It Snow. It's written by 3 different authors, John Green, Maureen Johnson, and Lauren Miracle. Now, this book has 3 different stories. They're all interconnected, and they all happen because there's a huge snowstorm and everyone's just snowed in. The first book focuses on Jubilee, who's on her way to her grandparents via train because her parents were arrested for trying to do this crazy Christmas thing that we're not even gonna get to because it doesn't matter. The second story focuses on friends that are trying to make their way to the Waffle House where Jubilee first found refuge from the snowstorm, and that's the main premise of that story. The third one focuses on a girl who recently broke up with her boyfriend whom Jubilee met in the train. So the first story, written by Maureen Johnson, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't anything spectacular either. Jubilee has this boyfriend boyfriend who she likes really for his merits and goals, just like he likes her for her merits and goals. They don't really have a connection. She kind of fails to see this until she meets small town guy Stuart, and it's basically insta love because by the end of that story they're just kissing and she broke up with her boyfriend, whatever. She first makes her way to this Waffle House where unfortunately for her, a group of perky cheerleaders from the same train follow her to so that they could keep practicing their routine. This book was so weird with cheerleaders because this theme continues and is actually the theme that connects them all together other than the snow. Jubilee just hates cheerleaders. She gives that whole I'm not like other girls or like the pick-me girl type because she just really hates cheerleaders. She gets annoyed that all guys just want to be around them. She feeds into that stereotype that they're just pretty dumb girls that would do anything to get a guy's attention. Nothing spectacular about the first story, but I thought it was just maybe setting up the stage for the other two stories. And then it just got really bad because in John Green's story, you have these guys in the Waffle House that are just drooling over the cheerleaders all the time. They're constantly talking about how these cheerleaders just want to sleep with them because of course cheerleaders always just want to sleep with guys. The guys call up this group of friends asking them to bring Twister so that they could play Twister with these cheerleaders even though it's super snowy. And this is where we start getting some really problematic lines. One of them ends up going into slut shaming. The characters are really surprised the Waffle House is still open, and then one of the characters says, "Oh right," said JP, "I forgot that Waffle Houses are like Lindsay Lohan's legs, always open." Just why? What's the point? These jokes continue throughout the book, just again joking about women and cheerleaders always wanting to just have sex with whoever. It's also unfortunate because this group of friends has one female friend, and this girl is actually called the Duke because she dresses so boyish that she looks like a guy, and instead of calling her the Duchess, which is the nicknames they give each other, they call her the Duke. Even though she later rants about not wanting to fall into that stereotype of lecturing boys because she's the only female there about sexism, that's exactly how John Green writes her, and that's exactly her role in this book, which they don't listen to anyway. Now, not only does this book keep joking about women and how the Duke isn't feminine enough to even be considered a girl, so all of these characters are actually straight, but they end up teasing each other, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay jokes. They also actually throw this joke out at the Duke, who wants them all to shut up with their cheerleader and sexist jokes because she wants to watch this hot guy in a movie, and someone says that's so gay, and she says it's not gay because I'm a girl. So things like this continue on. When the MC and the Duke end up kissing and being together, again the friends start yelling you're gay jokes. She keeps yelling that she's a girl, and they're like, yeah, not at you, we're talking about our best bud next to you that you just kissed. You're so gay for kissing the Duke. I didn't even like the story in general. I think even without the jokes, it just wasn't a good story. I can't even fully tell you all of their names because I don't care. You would think that's as bad as it gets, but it gets even worse because of course we have to triple whammy this book and fall into racism. So in the second book we have It Girl. I don't even know her name, but she's really popular and everyone constantly talks about how beautiful and blonde she is. So blonde, very blonde, beautiful blonde hair, beautiful long blonde hair, very, very blonde, and ends up dating the mysterious, dark, handsome Jeb. The main character is really upset over her breakup with Jeb, even though she's the one that cheated on him. And when we go back and learn about their story, really all she's doing is complaining that he didn't give her more expensive gifts and that he actually wasn't trying to impress her by doing all of these charitable things, that it was just his character. And for some reason this really bothers her because she believes he should be trying to impress her. It's very strange. It really feels like she just thinks Jeb should serve her. It gets worse because the only way she describes him is just by how hot he is, about his skin tone, consistently fixates on his skin tone, on his dark eyes, on his hair, how handsome, how hot, how handsome, how hot. And then she uses one of the worst descriptors out there. And this is the paragraph where I just called it quits. And I said, I'm done with this book. I'm done. So Jeb actually moved to this new school from the Cherokee Reservation. And then we get to this line. He was wearing a denim jacket even though it was freezing. And I remember wondering if maybe he and his mom didn't have much money. I'd heard that the two of them had moved to Gracetown from the Cherokee Reservation. And then the final line, he seems so exotic. Ma'am, this is the 21st century. Why are we still describing characters who are indigenous or people of color or black individuals as exotic? Exotic to what? To who exactly is Jeb exotic? This is where I finally had it. I'm so mad that I bought this book. The only reason I'm kind of fine with the fact that I bought this book is that at least I supported an indie bookstore, but I just want to throw it in the fire as well. I still see this book circulating and being recommended during the holiday season. Don't. If someone freaking told me these lines existed in this book, I would have avoided it like the plague. And instead, I thought it was going to be a cute, fun story. And because John Green's on it too, I was like, well, the guy's written good books in the past, right? At least that's what people say. And it was just so freaking bad. So stay away from it. Don't buy it. Don't do it. If this is your first video or your third and you're enjoying the content, please subscribe, like, and comment. All of those things really help out this channel. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.